people actually saying to me that something was gay, using gay as in meaning it's shit, when they knew about my sexuality. They knew I was in a relationship with a woman. I mean, what are these people on? Me and my girlfriend, one of my ex-partners, being refused accommodation on holiday because we were a same-sex couple. That was probably one of the most upsetting and distressing situations that we were in together because of our sexuality, because of, the fact we were in a relationship together. And then, a number of times being stared at or laughed at or feeling uncomfortable, or, people making insulting comments towards us when we were out. Maybe we were holding hands, showing affection to each other. That was probably like the limit of what we did because, doesn't feel safe. It doesn't feel comfortable. Hey everybody, I'm Sarah Taylor and welcome to the Queerpreneur podcast. This is the place for queer women who want to start or grow their business and their straight allies, where we build community, raise awareness and create a platform to celebrate incredible women leaders, change makers and trailblazers. In every episode, my intention is to share knowledge, learning and resources that inspire you to think big, create more impact and step fully into your life and business in a way that feels authentic to you. So if you're ready to take action towards creating a more equal world for everyone, then let's get started. Hey everybody, it's Sarah here and welcome back to the Queerpreneur podcast. And before we dig into this week's topic, which is all about my personal experience of homophobia, so it's going to be a bit of I think it's going to be a bit of an emotional one, actually. I've thought about what I want to talk to you about, so let's see where it goes. But before we dive into that, I just want to say thank you to everybody who's given me feedback, who sent me messages about last week's episode, which was all about up-leveling your allyship. So do give that one a listen if you haven't already. I talk about the sort of 3 stages, if you like, the journey of allyship from the new ally who really wants to make a difference and really support LGBTQ plus inclusion, but might not always know what to say or where to start, or how to do it, right through to the super ally who is taking action, who is really speaking up and speaking out and getting involved personally, socially, politically maybe as well, and really making powerful change, a powerful advocate for LGBTQ plus inclusion and rights and equality. So do give that episode a listen. It's last week's episode. And also, if you haven't already done so, then do download. I'll put the link again in the show notes today for my inclusion guide. So that gives you really some ideas about how to create more inclusive communities and spaces for LGBTQ plus people. And actually it gives you things that I think will be really helpful in your everyday life as well, whether you have a business or not, whether you are creating communities or not. So do download that. I hope you find it valuable. And let's get on with today's episode. From the very first moment that I thought I might be gay, I experienced homophobia. Whether that was internalized homophobia, so that is a strong sense and belief that you are wrong, there is something inherently wrong with you, to homophobia from the external world, from societal norms, from cultural beliefs, from everything that I saw around me. All of the messages that I received were that being gay wasn't normal, being gay was different, being gay was something to be ashamed of, being gay was something that you didn't tell other people. So unsurprisingly, I suppose, other than myself and the feelings that I have for myself, that I have been on a pretty long journey to heal in terms of my own internalized homophobia. The people closest to me were the ones that hurt me the most. So this solo episode today is my chance to share my own experiences in this life of mine so far, in the hope that it will help you if you're experiencing either internalized homophobia, which I think most of us do, or whether you are struggling, in the world today, struggling with the fact that everywhere we look, we see headlines, we hear stories, we hear of people's experiences of harm, discrimination, and hate caused to them because of who they are and who they love, right? And I think this one's also for the people that might look at me and think that I'm okay. I don't feel any shame about who I am as a gay woman, or I don't struggle, or that I don't experience feelings of shame, or that I haven't and don't experience homophobia towards me, against me. It's for you too, if you have looked at me, if you have watched me, if you have seen me on social media and thought those things, because I'm going to be sharing what it's like to be a gay woman, a gay, white, privileged, cisgendered, able-bodied gay woman, even with all my privilege, what it's like for me. So I want to start this journey when I was aged around 13. And I think it was the first time that I fell in love with a girl. She was a girl that I knew from the riding stables that I went to for about 5 years. It was like my second home when I was a kid. I loved horses. I spent every weekend at these stables. And I just wanted to be in this girl's company all the time. We would spend all day at the riding stables together. I would stay at her house overnight. I'd stay there at the weekends. And I think I just worshipped the ground that she walked on. And then one day, her mum spoke to my mum. And I don't know what the conversation was that they had, but I wasn't invited to stay at this friend's house anymore. I didn't know why. I didn't really know what had happened. But I got the feeling that it was something bad because of how my mum spoke to me about it. And she told me that, it wasn't a good idea to be staying at this friend's house all the time, and that I should have other friends and I should not be having this one special friend. And of course, what I didn't know back then was that this was my first experience of homophobia. Back then, age 13, they were concerned about the depth of our friendship. They thought there was something unnatural, something wrong with it, something that, was too much. So my next experience of homophobia was at school, where we had a PE teacher that everyone called a lesbian. And I even remember her name, and I won't say her name on here, but she's the only teacher's name that I can remember from school. And I remember we'd have showers after PE, and everyone would say, "Oh no, the lesbian's looking, she's a pervert, she's disgusting," all of these terrible things that we said. And I joined in, or I was passively joining in, I don't really remember, to this poor woman who may or may not have been a lesbian, who knows? So those sorts of situations where I definitely was having feelings for friends of mine. I was definitely feeling a bit confused, but I didn't even think about whether that meant that I was a lesbian. This was the late 70s. I had no real idea even of what a lesbian was. We weren't taught anything about it. There was nothing that I saw in the media. I don't remember it ever being something that I had in my consciousness. I had really no idea, other than this PE teacher who had, everybody ridiculing her and saying that she was disgusting and a pervert and wrong and that she should be sacked. And so I did what I think so many people do. I dated boys. I had a couple of relationships with men in my 20s because, well, why wouldn't I? And I wanted to be like everybody else, I suppose, as well. I wanted to be like my friends. And yet when I look back, it's like I can join all the dots of my experiences and the attractions that I was feeling and the discomfort that I was feeling and the confusion that I was feeling. I would go out with friends, groups of friends, female friends. We'd all get drunk. I was going to lots of parties. I was staying out all night. I was sleeping at people's houses. And often I would find myself sharing a bed with one of my friends or, with another woman. And I just reflect back on that now. And I know that I had, and I knew at the time that I had attraction for them. I was feeling things. I didn't act on those things, but I woke up the next day and felt these terrible feelings of shame and like, what's wrong with me? Am I really feeling these like sexual attraction for somebody? Is that really what it is? I didn't even really know what it was. And yet I knew that it felt, I believe that it felt wrong. I believe that it felt like something to be ashamed of. I believe that it felt like something I could never tell anybody about. And so all of these thoughts and these feelings I was having were based, were as a result of my internalized homophobia. That I was wrong in some way and that I shouldn't be thinking or feeling any of these things. I was bad. Being attracted to or having feelings for women was bad. And so this went on like this for a few more years. I even dated and lived with a really great man in my late 20s who I genuinely loved. But I always felt like something was missing. And really, I just wanted to be friends with him, and enjoy him. Enjoy his friendships. It never really felt right, but I didn't know what right was. I just thought, this must be it. This must be how it is. And I didn't really think that there was anything else. And then, again, probably quite a common story. I had my first same-sex experience with a woman. And everything changed from that moment forward, really. And yet, as life-changing as it was also terrifying. And it triggered and activated so much shame for me. And my coming out story I share in my episode, I think, about late in life lesbians. If you want to have a look back at, I think it's called The Truth About Late in Life Lesbians. Back in the early days of this podcast, if you want to hear more about that story and my own personal coming out story, really. But for today, I want to focus on that shame and that fear that I felt when I began to realise I was gay, that internalised homophobia and the external world of homophobia, if you like. Because I woke up from that first night with a woman feeling excruciating shame that lasted for weeks and so much confusion and so isolated. I didn't want to talk to anybody about it. How could I be gay? What did that mean for my future? So many questions. How could I tell my friends? How could I even start to have the conversation with them? People that loved me in my life. And all I could think about was, what if people found out? What if people found out about my terrible secret? And it makes me so sad when I look back on that now. The fact that it felt like a dark, dirty secret that I didn't want anyone to find out about. All these years later, I still feel that tightening in my stomach. Yeah, it was a really, really difficult time for me. And I think now for anybody that might be struggling with this, one of the hardest parts is not knowing whether you can trust anybody with who you are, who you really are, with your truth. And if anyone is listening and this is you and this is resonating, I'm always here for you. I'm always listening. And I'm always, my inbox is always open, DM me over on Instagram, send me an email, contact me on Facebook or LinkedIn. Please don't hesitate. So it was the early 1990s when all of this was happening for me, when I realised that I was gay. And the world was a different place, for sure. I didn't know any lesbians. The only out lesbians that I knew about were Martina Navratilova and Ellen DeGeneres. And I really didn't feel like I had much in common with them. And I didn't really see any role models. I didn't know, anybody that I could look up to. There was no one to look up to. There was no points of reference. And so over time, I did tell my friends, I did tell a couple of my very best friends, but I had to get drunk to do so. That was how difficult it was for me. And I think one of the most empowering, if you like, things that I did in terms of my coming out journey, because of course, we all know that coming out's a journey. We're doing it all the time. It's not a one-off thing, right? We all know that. But one of the kind of best things I did, I suppose, at that time was join a women's football team, which became my lifeline for exploring my sexuality. Other women who were there, who had similar stories to mine. And I appreciate that I am playing into a massive, massive stereotype here. But, I think the reality was that the stereotype that if you join a women's football team or a women's hockey team, you're going to find lesbians in there, or they're all lesbians, or whatever the stories that people told. I guess, and it also depended on where you were in the country and all those sorts of things. But there were women there, I think, probably any lesbian that's listening will probably be smiling right now. And I guess what I found was that it was like living a double life. One where I didn't talk at all about my personal life, at work, with my wider group of friends. I was even afraid to tell people that I played football in case they did then start to suspect that I was gay. And I couldn't stand the thought of it. I still couldn't stand the thought of it. So my own internalised homophobia was eating away inside me still. And I realise I'm painting a really bleak picture here. I did have some brilliant times with my football buddies. We had amazing parties, nights out in gay bars, discovering gay bars that were fun and that were liberating. And I was so, so fortunate to have found friends, lifelong friends that I still have today, that live in the same city as me. Lifelong friends that would always have my back. And, if any of you are listening, you know who you are. Thank you to all of you. I love you so much. And this is one of the wonderful things about the queer community, the LGBTQ plus community. We have friendships, we have bonds, we have connections that go deep because we share these experiences. And it's something very special. So let's fast forward to my first serious relationship with a woman and homophobia, like societal conditioning, cultural beliefs, religious beliefs, systemic homophobia. My mum called her my special friend. which I know, again, any of you that's listening will be smiling kind of in a wry, funny but not really funny way. My mum also said that we don't need to tell anybody else about her. We don't need to mention it to the neighbours or the relatives. And bearing in mind that I was 31, 32 at the time, I remember going with my ex-partner to Scotland for a holiday to our family home, and my relatives, like my aunt and uncle, were, getting the place ready for us and making up the beds and all this sort of thing. And my mum saying to me that we needed to make it look like we both slept in different bedrooms and, ruffle the sheets in the spare room in the family home. And I was like, I just accepted it. I was like, oh yeah, I must do that, because of course this is a terrible, shameful thing and we mustn't let the relatives know about it. And I'm like, now I just think, oh God, talk about reinforcing that internalised homophobia, that shame about having a relationship with a woman, being in a relationship with a woman. And of course, the people that care about us and that love us in their own way are trying to protect us, are trying to keep us safe. But it's really causing so much harm. So again, I think it's another really interesting thing to reflect on, in terms of if you have people in your life who are LGBTQ+, how are the ways that maybe you think you're protecting them or keeping them safe actually causing them harm? And since that relationship, I've been in a couple of other long-term relationships. My most recent relationship was 9 years, and experienced all sorts of homophobia and homophobic comments and remarks and experiences. Things from people asking me, oh, she must be the man in the relationship, or who's the man in the relationship, or you don't look like a lesbian, you don't look like a gay person, whatever gay, lesbian people look like. People actually asking me if I'm sure I'm gay. People commenting on the way my friends look. Like, I remember someone saying to me that one of my friends looked like a man. People actually saying to me that something was gay, using gay as in meaning it's shit, when they knew about my sexuality. They knew I was in a relationship with a woman. I mean, what are these people on? Me and my girlfriend, one of my ex-partners, being refused accommodation on holiday because we were a same-sex couple. That's probably one of the most upsetting and distressing situations that we were in together because of our sexuality, because of, the fact we were in a relationship together. And then, a number of times being stared at or laughed at or feeling uncomfortable, or, people making insulting comments towards us when we were out. Maybe we were holding hands, showing affection to each other. That was probably like the limit of what we did, because, it doesn't feel safe. It doesn't feel comfortable. So, I say fortunately nothing more harmful than these things happen to us. And yet, of course, these are all microaggressions, one of the most insidious and harmful forms of homophobia, of discrimination that there is. And anyone that's been following my story will know that I've done a lot of work, a lot of inner work, a lot of healing to heal my internalised homophobia and shame about who I am and who I love. And now, I can honestly say that I am proud to be a gay woman. I'm proud of who I am. And I've come out to everyone in my personal life. I've come out in my business, which was quite a big thing for me in the last 2-3 years, actually moving my business into a space where I'm supporting LGBTQ plus people, particularly LGBTQ plus women, to help women like me, other women who are struggling to fully live their truth and bring all of themselves into their life and business and live authentically and live feeling free and liberated without all that anxiety, with all of that stress, with all of that worry about what people will think. And that is the work now that I'm so passionate about, as you will know if you're listening to this podcast or if you read any of my posts on social media. But I can't sit here and record this podcast honestly and openly with you and pretend that I'm fully healed. Pretend that my shame doesn't sometimes get reactivated. That I don't sometimes feel that fear, that sense of those sort of almost like residue of those feelings that I had for so long, those emotions that I had for so long. That someone might see that part of me, that someone might not like it, that someone might be uncomfortable around me. And yes, it happens so much less often. I'm really glad to be able to sit here and say it's rare that it happens. But every time I meet somebody new or someone who might not know that I'm gay, I do remember that I have this part of me that I'm still working to fully heal, that is a little bit afraid. And it doesn't matter if I decide never to speak about it to that person, or if I don't want to develop a relationship with that person. I know that that work is still not quite done. And as I'm talking to you today, I wonder if this is related to the fact that the world isn't healed yet. The world is a homophobic, biphobic, trans and queerphobic place. So many of us, and I use the term us deliberately, we have unconscious bias. We have discrimination and fear about LGBTQ plus people. We've been taught that they are not like us. They are weird or not normal or dirty or sinful, whether we know it or not, whether we accept that or not. And if you take one thing away from this episode, I urge you to get really curious and honest with yourself about your own bias and discrimination. And I know for all of you listening, if you have bias, if you do discriminate, it will be unconscious. Because I know that you're listening to this podcast and you follow me because you totally believe in equality. You totally believe in equal opportunity for LGBTQ plus people. And you believe in an end to the hate and the harm and the discrimination, right? I know you do. And I know you're an ally if you're listening to me right now. And part of our allyship work, and I say our because I'm an ally too, I'm an ally for my bisexual, my trans, my gay male friends, my gay male community members, my non-binary community members, my asexual community members, my intersex community members, every single other person in the LGBTQ plus community. I'm an ally for all of them. And we all need to work on helping everybody feel welcome, see our own privilege and use it to uplift and create welcoming, inclusive spaces for LGBTQ plus people. And if you're listening to me and you're saying, yes, Sarah, I agree with you, but you're not quite sure where to start, please check out my guide to inclusion. The link to it is in the show notes. And yeah, that's it for today. I'm sure I will continue this story either here on this podcast or somewhere else in the future, because of course, who knows what's next? I really do believe that we are at a great time of opportunity, a time where people are listening, where people are wanting to create change. And I'd love to hear your feedback on today's episode. I'd love to know what resonated and how your life and your experiences may have been different or may have been similar. Please tell me. Because I also think that sharing stories with each other, understanding our similarities, connecting, building relationships, growing communities are all amazing ways to create the collective change that we're all seeking. So if you've enjoyed today's episode, please leave a review, because the more reviews the podcast gets, the more people get to hear about it and the more people that we can connect with and help and support. And as always, thank you so much for sharing your time with me. This has been the Queerpreneur podcast with me, Sarah Taylor. And I can't wait to catch you next time.